Eleonore Pauwels is director of the Anticipatory Intelligence Lab at the Wilson Center's Science, Technology, and Innovation program. She joins us today to provide an update on the latest of what experts are calling an AI revolution. Eleonore, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, John. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, I see some new terminology, anticipatory intelligence, a phrase I'm not familiar with. Maybe you could explain that, and then I'll ask you to define artificial intelligence.
Sure. So the AI lab, that's how I actually call it, the AI lab has a mission to compare and analyze how a set of disruptive technologies, such as artificial intelligence, will raise new opportunities and challenges for health, security, economics, and governance in different geopolitical context.
So anticipatory intelligence is a bigger term or a more inclusive term than AI, yes, which is a subdivision of that.
It's actually a term that's used in intelligence by YARPA, DARPA. It's a field of foresight that's looking at the convergence of different technologies and their integration in our socio-technical systems. And so my goal is to actually unveil what AI, artificial intelligence, means for our democracies. So I think that, you know, the integration of a new form of intelligence, a new intelligent species to share this planet with us, this introduction has significant consequences. And I think we need to have a deep collective intelligence platform, an open civic debate to think about those consequences and prepare our democracies for it.
Now, artificial intelligence has almost become a term of popular culture. And when that happens, sometimes the term is watered down in a way where we think we're all talking about the same thing, but we may not be. What are experts talking about when they use the term artificial intelligence?
So you can think of AI as a set of technologies that automate the capacities related to our intelligence and our cognition. So including perception, learning, decision-making, and problem-solving. Yet in its current uses, AI is essentially a powerful optimization process, a powerful optimization platform, which is based on massive combinatorial computation to recognize patterns between different big data sets. And so this capacity to optimize information management will help us deal with, different kind of complex wicked problems, that's how we call them, from decoding our genomes to optimizing our cities, our critical infrastructure, and even maybe our ecosystems.
Some people talk about that time when artificial intelligence exceeds human intelligence, and others say, well, that's a pipe dream, it can't really happen. How close are we to building machines that can think at least just like humans, if not in ways that are superior to humans?
So we are far away from this scenario, which is the singularity, right? When you see machine being intelligent enough to evolve by themselves and direct the future and the fate and our destinies. We are far from that. It would be very difficult to predict when and how that could happen. So what you are facing now is machines that are self-teaching computer programs. So they can teach themselves how to learn different patterns. They can learn speech, they can learn what an image represents, they can learn to recognize your voice. So it's basically an optimization process of our big data. That's what we are doing now. The next step will be to actually design machines that have enough cognitive equipment to develop a capacity of abstraction and predictive intelligence. So if you want an AI system that can decode the unknowns in your genome, the unknowns in our climate patterns, you need a system that has enough cognitive equipment to actually be able to look for those unknowns. You need this form of abstraction and this form of predictive intelligence. And for that, we need to figure out, how do we learn enough about biological intelligence, about our own brains, to actually mimic this architecture and be able to imitate that with artificial systems.
So I used the term in my introduction of an AI revolution, which I see in the literature. You use the term about disruptive technologies. I think of things like the Industrial Revolution and the impact that had on the way that we live and the way that we work. Are we talking about a revolution of that level or of something even more significant?
Yes, actually AI, is considered as the fourth industrial revolution. So as I often say, AI is a set of technologies too powerful for humankind to refuse. It is a revolution. And as a positive force, AI is on the verge of invading every major industry, from precision medicine to smart cities to affective computing, security, and even defense. So it's very much, a general purpose technology. It's a technology that will be pervasive because it's going to connect information superiority with economic power. So it's the next driver of our economies, and I would label it as a revolution. It will transform our lives and ourselves.
Where are we seeing the sort of the beachhead in this revolution? Where's the most progress being made? Where are we starting to see the possibilities of the changes still to come?
The most interesting sector, at least according to me, is precision medicine. So one of the biggest challenges of our time is to better understand the functions in our genomes. And the kind of AI you need for that is a form of AI that will not only apply combinatorial computation to our genomes, but will also keep adapting and learning out of this complexity with the same plasticity as biology. That's the current challenge. And applying deep learning to our genomes, we are going to be able to predict which genes are the most important to particular functions. So such an insight can help us understand how a particular disease occurs, why a virus has high transmissibility, and why certain populations are more susceptible to certain type of infections. Mm-hmm. With this insight, we'll be able to develop much more precise, much more tailored treatments and diagnostics, such as liquid biopsies, for cancer and for other afflictions. Now, using deep learning to our genomes can also help us understand how to use genome editing to optimize our biology. CRISPR, the other abbreviation we've all heard about. So, just a few weeks ago, US scientists tried editing a gene for the first time in the body of a patient to tackle his metabolic disease. The same week, and this is amazing, doctors deleted a mutation in the stem cells of a young boy to replace 80% of his skin and cure him from a terrible skin disease. Now imagine that you have AI predictive intelligence in our hospitals. You could try to avoid unintended consequences after surgery or in clinical trials, those two examples I just mentioned. Imagine that we have connected health devices that can analyze our genomes day by day, year after year.
And you're able to do this inside the patient's body?
Yes, you can do that inside the patient's body. You can do that inside, outside. It's in the lab, it depends which techniques you use. But what I see is that it's a decentralized process. So imagine, for example, the attributes of an AI citizen in a smart city, right? Patients, congressmen, scientists, everyone will be monitoring the DNA of their own bodies on shared cloud labs. AI platforms connected to our smartphones will analyze this biological data on the fly, and they will be integrated to our most critical infrastructures, including hospitals and airports. And you can translate the same concept to other kind of data related to our financial systems, data related to energy and transportation, data related to disaster management and response. We had a string of earthquake and storms recently. How do you know where to dispatch help, right? How do you know where there are survivors? Well, all of those services could be helped with a much more optimized computation driven by AI and equipped with sensors and biosensors. Wow. That's the smart city of the future.
My misspent youth of watching Universal horror movies leads me to the Frankenstein question, which is unavoidable. You use the term dual-use technology and talk about how a system that can be used for good outcomes, the kind you just described in medicine, can also be used to kill people, essentially for military or other applications. Explain to us this notion of dual-use technology and give us some sense of where the public policy discussion is in this regard. Are we talking about it? Are we anticipating the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how to manage it?
Mm-hmm. We'll need to learn how to live well with the potential benefits and failures of AI. And I would argue that AI technologies are an exceptional example of dual-use technologies. And I would even say dual nature. And I mean by this that the intelligent program itself could induce potential risk and benefits because of its nature, because of how it has been designed, not only by virtue of its applications. So for instance, AI systems could fail us because of intrinsic reasons, such as biases in design that could lead to discrimination, inadequate optimization of our goals and our values, or those systems could be lacking transparency. And so we have to work with AI technologists with scientists, with policymakers, to have a debate about those intrinsic, those dual nature issues. Beyond dual nature, AI systems will also raise dual use implications. So, uses or implications that are related to how they are being used. And in defense and security, this dual use potential is just mind-blowing. It's actually significant. We could be facing more precise and pervasive cyber hacking. Mm-hmm. There could be potential attacks on our data platforms. You could corrupt data platforms such as energy and hospitals. You could turn facial recognition into ubiquitous surveillance with impact in intelligence and surgical warfare. And autonomous systems could become weapons platforms on seas and land. And those are only the example in the defense context. Beyond defense, you could imagine, and it's not only imagine actually, we are already facing several troubling examples of those dual use implications. For example, facial recognition could be turned into workplace surveillance and predictive policing. You could see also the same way if you integrate this form of cognition, ubiquitous cognition in our cities could become open books for cyber hackers. Another example I find very troubling is that Facebook is now planning to actually use machine learning, speech, image, emotion recognition to uncover among users signs of depression and neurosis. The idea is to prevent suicides and help users, but the development in emotion...
It can also be used to sell your product.
Sell products, surveillance. The problem here is that this precision that you find with AI in predictive intelligence could become more personalized form of discrimination, more personalized surveillance. So we get better services, but we also get an eye on everything we do.
So you said we need to discuss these things. We need to. I wonder, is there a we out there who's actually doing that? I mean, there's practical concerns, there are ethical concerns, there are morality concerns, there are all kinds of concerns. Is there any activity in that regard that is robust?
Well, I'm actually an advisor on the AI initiative, which is part of the Harvard Kennedy School. And we have started an open civic debate, which is global, in different languages, English, Russian, Chinese, Japanese. And the idea is to try to discuss, some of those issues. This debate is open to citizens. So the main concept is to try to create a collective intelligence platform.
How would you describe the current level of participation in that platform?
It's actually a fairly good level. I think we have about 500 or even more than that participants who have actually given their own thoughts.
Are there countries that are leading or farther ahead in this regard?
Yes, there are. We're facing a global augmentation race, but this race is led by China and the US. And I'm personally more concerned about the developments in China. What you have to understand is that China has adopted a concept that we call civil-military fusion, and that's very clear in their AI strategy. So the idea is that as AI systems become pervasive, we will use them to augment our civil capacities, but by the same token, our military capacities. And another reason to believe that AI systems will become ubiquitous is that the agenda is driven by the private sector, led by dozens of multinationals in US and China. And so it is very unlikely that global governance will be able to stop corporations and nations from developing the full spectrum of AI systems. And so we will reach interesting benefits. There will be achievements, but I think we need to move the conversation towards what I call civilian safety by design. So we need to think about safety. We need to think about new ways to protect citizens in this revolution led by AI and converging technologies. It is not our old notion of safety. It is a safety that has a particular focus on privacy and consent. So there is currently a weakening of the boundary between personal data and public data. And that will increase with the use of AI. And I'm personally very concerned about that weakening of this boundary between personal data and public data. And I think that has to be at the center of this notion of civilian safety by design. Same with consent. how do you consent to self-driving cars, right? I mean, if they come,
The implications here for the law, for just philosophical concepts actualized by government or implemented by government for privacy or what it means in a constitution are all up for grabs in this brave new world.
Most of our governance and regulations are actually outdated, in the face of this new AI revolution. It's transformative enough that we will need to review our concepts. And that's why I'm trying to coin, this idea of civilian safety by design. You have to think about privacy. Privacy these days was, our medical records, our genomes. All of this is already changing. In the future with AI, if you think of brain-computer interfaces that are already in development and will come to use probably in 20 years, a few decades, you are extending the notion of privacy to neural data. The data in our brains. So it goes from the genome to
Not
neural
just the
data.
pictures you post on Instagram.
No, it's much
Wow.
wider than that. You also need to think about privacy of our children. So this Christmas, you will find on the market intelligent dolls. Those are dolls that are already powered by, primary, basic, simple AI systems. But that means that they can develop a set of emotions. They can interact with your kids. They can ask questions. They can record information. They can ask for friends, for a dollhouse, for other products. And so you need to be
Just what
thinking.
parents need, another child asking for things.
You need to be thinking about, how you actually govern our data. And the privacy notion is very much extending to, privacy of our kids, our neural data, our genomes, the most intimate information about ourselves.
This leads me to a final question, this visions of the future, utopia versus dystopia. Are we headed toward a brave new world where AI enabled, enhanced everything creates this paradise on Earth? Or are we looking at, the Terminator and the rule of the machines and a dark age of subservience to our smartphones?
So these fears of the Terminator are certainly inflated. I even think they're actually misleading us. We're not going to be facing killer robots. That's for science fiction and movies. But we are going to be facing an overtaking by computation first, which means that computation is going to drive the agenda in our lives and the research agenda. This will have an impact on the workforce, a wide impact. It's not only, automation taking jobs in factories. We knew that. We are used to the idea. It's also computation taking jobs in data analysis, which is much, much larger, meaning that there will be an intense demand for people who can outperform computers. There will be an intense demand for emotional intelligence, creativity, entrepreneurship, complex problem solving. People like, George Church, the father of genetics, who can master the whole scientific discovery process about genetics. Where do we teach these skills? How do we acquire those skills for the future? And so we need to be thinking about how to prepare our societies and the next generation for this change. And it's not only in our Western democracies, it's also beyond. Will the ongoing AI revolution also reach other countries? Beyond the US, beyond China? How do we think about the disruption, the destabilization that could happen in Middle East, in the Arab countries? For example, if you think of the Arab Spring, imagine the Arab Spring powered by AI bots, right? The kind of disruption and lack of legitimacy you could create here.
What's the time frame for this type of disruption that you're describing?
The AI bots are already there.
So it's happening now.
Yeah, everything that's linked to powerful computation is here. What you don't have yet is, robots that can replace a nurse or a daycare teacher, right? That's too much chaotic. We don't have that capacity yet. But affective computing,
we're working on it.
Yes, and better robotics is certainly something we're developing for good, and for eventually dual use implications. I would say it's a revolution. What I like about the science fiction is like it makes us think of our anxiety, and our anxiety is actually very old. It's something that started in antiquity. Think of Galatea in Pygmalion. Think of the golem. Think of all those creatures
Sure.
we thought about that would surpass our intelligence, or artificial alter ego, right? So those are fears we've been collecting and we've been nurturing. But what I would like to happen now is a debate about privacy, a debate about the change in workforce, a debate about the inequalities that could come with the fourth industrial revolution. And I think that's our responsibility, and the AI Lab is going to move towards that direction.
Well, these are obviously critically important subjects, and thank you for leading the way in pushing for this discussion that has to come.
Thank you
Always
so
a
much.
pleasure to speak with you, Eleonore.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.